So, all the actors in the film, or most of the actors, I shouldn't say all the actors, were Native Americans, which was somewhat unusual, but to be expected, given that the director was Native American. But the film, in general, has all the standard melodramatic features that were common in popular entertainment at the time. Appearances are always deceiving. People who appear dead are actually alive. Women are actually men, or vice versa. Rich people are actually poor, or vice versa. This is a very common theme, as is the chase. In this case, it's a chase that's motivated by the pursuit of justice. The forces of law and order are attempting to apprehend a murderer and bring him to justice. And that was another common theme in early movies. The innocent person about to be executed and saved at the very last minute. The unusual conclusion in this film is that the interracial couple live happily ever after. That violated some of the basic rules of the separation of the races that existed at the time. Young Deer made another film the following year, Red Deer's Devotion, about the successful romance and marriage of an Indian man and a white woman. Then in 1913, Young Deer moved to England and he worked in the British and French film industries for the next 20 years, though all of his European movies have been lost. So he was a major figure in the early film industry internationally, and it's unusual that we don't know anything about him. The film is on YouTube, so I'll put a link to it in case you're interested in watching it. The conclusion of the film countered more common images found in U.S. popular culture, which is that indigenous peoples and European settlers do not never, ever, ever mix or become a single people. At times, the story showed friendships, and one of the most famous cases of that is James Fenimore Cooper's The Last of the Mohicans. But at the end of the story, the white main character has become the legitimate sole heir of his native adoptive father, who passes away, conveying the title to all the Mohican heritage and land to Natty Bumppo. More usually, settlers and or the army, this is in popular culture, but I suppose also in real life, settlers and or the army defeat hostile natives and evict them from the land so it can be developed. So if you're wondering what does a movie by James Young Deer have to do with thinking about concepts of property in the United States, it comes down to the very basic fact that all the property in the United States originally was owned or possessed by native peoples, by their polities. And the expansion westward of the United States between 1790 and 1890 was a phenomenon of tremendous drama, but actually generally not in the ways popular culture presented. The conquest of a Native American land more likely took place in courtrooms where lawyers and judges argued about what was a legitimate property claim. And the revolution had caused a particular problem for the new republic. Before the revolution, the crown possessed all land under rights of conquest. And title was given on a provisional basis to subjects of the crown to use or develop according to the terms of a royal grant, and those terms could be reversed. Ultimately, all property belonged to the sovereign. And anybody using land or possessing land or developing land was doing so at the behest of the sovereign. Well, what happens when you eliminate the king? Well, the judges and lawyers in the early republic determined that the king's right of absolute possession of land went back to William the Conqueror in 1066. And with the abolition of the king and his personal prerogative to control all land, land reverted to what was called allodial rights, a legal term that you don't need to worry about. But what it meant was that whoever was in possession of the land regained absolute possession of the land. So if you were a farmer, you now had possession of your land. But if you were a Native American people occupying a part of Ohio or Kentucky or Illinois, someplace that the United States wished to move west and occupy, under the very principles of law that the United States was establishing, those native peoples had regained absolute control of that land. It now belonged to them and nobody else. So this created a delicate situation for the governments, both federal and state, as the land that citizens most coveted indisputably belonged to the indigenous peoples, whose primary rights had been restored as a result of the revolution. And courts were particularly concerned and indeed vigilant that transfer of native peoples' rights be handled in compliance with English common law and whatever native customs or laws that had been registered or could be registered. Well, we might dismiss this as simple hypocrisy. In fact, what we're dealing with is complex hypocrisy, as the form of acquisition, the transfer of possession rights, had to be clear if those who claimed to be the new owners were subsequently to sell the land that they had taken from the original native peoples possessing that land. You no longer had a king or a crown who could say, the Indian peoples are my subjects and I take away a piece of their land and give it to so-and-so. Now there had to be some sort of negotiation between the native owners and the new owners who wanted to develop the land. So a complex set of legal precedent developed during the first 80 years of the Republic, which had two results: dispossessing the indigenous occupants and establishing a distinctively U.S. attitude as to what constituted ownership. In addition to dispossessing native peoples, the legal precedents followed a general political will seeking to prevent the accumulation of land into large estates or the development of a class whose wealth and privilege derived from permanent ownership of the land. So mere possession and use of land endowed people with rights, but making improvements on the land came to be the nub and the essence of what was required to establish a full or real title, to establish a title that courts would say, oh, this is secure, this is real, this person actually has a legitimate title to the land. A succession of land users developed before the government would confirm property titles, that you had to be able to demonstrate that you had taken, that you